thanks for coming on the show today. Could you take a second to introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about the work that you do?
Well, hello, John, and thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. I am a human resource executive. I've been in human resources for over 25 years, almost touching 30 probably. I've worked in the international development arena of human resources since 2000. And I've really enjoyed it. I've run HR departments, I've started them, I've built them. I've managed them. I've done probably a little bit of everything when it comes to human resources. You name it, I've probably been through it, but I really enjoy what I do.
I can't wait to hear a little bit more about your experience and some of the stories that you have. Can you explain, though, international development? Is that just like development as we know it, but on an international scope, or is it something different?
Well, it's something different in the sense of when USA, the U.S. Agency for International Development, was around. We did a lot of work with them. We did a lot of work with the State Department, USDA, in different countries around the world, whether it was in education, health, food security, civil society, governance. Those are all the things that
Okay.
I was involved in on the international development side of HR.
Okay. Thank you for
Mhm.
clearing that up. I just wanted to make sure I had the right understanding of that piece of your history. So
Mhm.
having been in a human resources position and having the experience that you do in these last 5, 6 years, I'm curious, what have you noticed that has changed when we think about what the needs the employees have and what companies are expected to provide?
Well, that's a really interesting question because since COVID, it's like things have
Mm,
changed. It's almost like they changed to what we called it to being an employee focused world. It's almost like real estate. You have a buyer's market, you have a seller's market. And during COVID, it was like the employee market. Employees seem to be able to command a certain amount in salaries, to get greener pastures. But those greener pastures meant you came into the office 5 days a week. And then I found that a lot of people really wanted to convert back to just hybrid, and that the
mm,
money, wasn't the driving force. But I also found that employee engagement is still a big issue and how employees think about their work and how they're treated at work, what they're looking for to fulfill their desires in their careers and everything. And then, of course, DEI has been a big, big issue recently. With the new administration, it's been do away with DEI, but companies are looking to figure out how they can manage certain parts of it that are really important, like inclusion. So
yeah,
those are
yeah.
things that I find a difference in. But there's always differences in human resources, changes. They happen all the time. I don't
All of
even
the
know where to
time.
pinpoint one.
Well, it's funny. It's part of the human condition is that things change all of the time, right?
Hmm.
That's our experience. So I imagine that the field would have to change as well.
Hmm.
So when you think of diverse thinking, right? And people coming together to innovate and use creativity to solve problems that haven't been solved yet.
Hmm.
And you have a mix of experiences and cultures and um, ways of doing things. How do you get folks to clear through that mess so that they can get focused on solving those type of problems?
Well, first of all, you have to focus people onto the problem instead of the distractions, the outside noise. So you have a lot of things and beliefs that people have, especially in international development. I work with people in different countries who have different cultural thinking,
Hmm.
or ideals and things of that nature. But what I found is that I had to get everyone focused on the issue that we're trying to resolve or the project that we're trying to complete. And when you're able to get people focused on that, it's like, yeah, the difference of opinion still come up, but that's still great because you need those differences of opinion sometimes to help come up with the right solution for the problem that you're trying to solve. But when people want to go into down a rabbit hole sometimes, and where their cultural beliefs and things of that nature kind of, um, I should say, clash, if you will. Again, I can't solve all of that, but I can bring people back to focus on the problem at hand and what works best.
Okay. Any stories of taking a group that was having those challenges and was able to successfully clear out the noise to solve a problem?
Well, I'll take one that's really simple. And it was dealing with an individual where there are other individuals who could have had the same opinion. When I was in the Marine Corps, I was a sergeant and I was in California. I was on working on the El Toro base and I was put in charge of a project to get done. There were probably 50 Marines or so that I was managing for this particular project.
Hmm.
And so, as we were meeting and getting things together, and one thing about the military, if people don't respect you, they at least respect your rank. And so during this process, at the end of one of the meetings, this male Marine, I forget his rank, he could have been a corporal or lance corporal or something. And he says to me, well, I just want you to know, I just don't think women belong in the Marine Corps. I just don't think they belong in the military. And I said, oh, do you? And I wasn't about to stand there and have a conversation with him about his feelings or why he thought about that. And I said, well, you know what? That's your opinion. You keep it to yourself. While you're on this detail, this is what I expect you to do. And so by the time we were done with the detail and doing all the things that we needed, he came up to me and he says, wow, you've really changed my opinion about women Marines. And that's when I asked him, how so? He says, because it didn't matter that you were female, you did the job and you got us all together to do this project and on this detail and to get it right. And I said, and you better remember that. That's all that matters, of what people bring to the table. And I need you to focus on that. And he and I became really good friends, working alongside one another, even though we worked in different departments and everything. But I always think about that story because you do have people who come together with varying opinions and they have strong
Oh yeah.
opinions about things. I don't care if you have those opinions, as long as we're able to get down to it and get the work done. Because at the end of the day, my butt's on the line and your butt's on the line with me. Our butt's on the line together. We're either going to be successful or we're not together. And
Uh,
so I just always remember that story because women Marines were always faced with things like that. And so I'm like, I'm a Marine like you. You're either going to work with me or I'm going to kick you out, and meaning that you're going to go to the brig or something for disrespect. So,
and I'm assuming you held a rank above that or
yes,
two,
I was
right?
a
So,
sergeant then. Yes.
okay, okay. That is a wonderful and transformational story. And there's a key element there that I want to focus on, and it's the conflict
Mm-hmm.
that ended up once resolved or, worked through, strengthened the relationship
Mm-hmm.
versus, dug in the divide.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed that I think it's like after COVID and with a mix of all kind of external factors that holding or occupying space, being with people who have different opinions has become harder. And people have kind of, instead of diving in and trying to bridge that or have the confidence, like, I don't care what you think of me, let's get to work. It seems like we're getting like more and more averse to diving into those conflicts. The stakes are high. People don't want to get canceled, or people don't want to be labeled as, you know, um, gender biased, or thinking something differently based on a characteristic that somebody has. Have you noticed that as well in these recent, like, post-COVID times?
Well, of course, in today's time, there's a lot of incivility going on because
Instability, yes.
people have a difference of opinion, and it's fine to have a difference of opinion. I just think that when you become disrespectful to other people regarding your position, I think that we can debate some things, and it's fine to debate because sometimes you find that maybe that difference of opinion really does have something to it. And let's discuss it. Let's see how we can bring our differences together to achieve a goal. And many times, like in today's society, or even before when you had cancel culture, which was something I just never really understood because for me, I never subscribed to it. Because my thing is that I am who I am in God, and no one else determines who I am. I don't need anyone to approve me, to live my life. No one else gives me the ability to breathe in and out. So the
Mm.
thing about cancel culture, and if you don't agree or if you do something or say something that the masses don't agree with, they cancel you. Well, guess what? I don't need you to live, so as we say, bye. Okay.
Yeah,
But
see ya.
in the
Oh,
work environment, it's not as easy to do that. And so that's why it's very important that you focus on your culture in your organization. So, one of the things in the past organization that I worked at, we focused on culture and changing the culture to something that was made people feel like they wanted to come to work and that they belonged.
mm,
And so in DEI, we added the B for belonging. Some other organizations had done that, but I found that it wasn't well known. And my thinking was that if you don't feel like you belong somewhere, you're not going to speak up. You're going to probably have less trust and other
hmm
issues that do not allow you to show up, bringing the skills and experience that we hired you for. And so that's not a good thing. And so what we had to do is to find out why there was a lack of trust, why there was a lack of people raising their hands and wanting to share their
hmm
expertise. And so we did employee engagement surveys, found out what some of the issues were, addressed what we could, and then said, okay, we may have to hold on some things that we can't. But the bottom line was that people saw the work that we did and how important it was for us to build a strong culture. And we just can't do that as leadership. We need everyone to contribute to culture because we all contribute to culture, right? We're the ones that show up today. We're the ones who actually are the culture, right? You can't have a
Yeah.
culture without people. So you have to find out what people's needs are, what their thoughts are, and things to
Mm.
come up with what is, I mean, in addition to the organization wanting to determine what kind of culture it wants for its employees. And the one that I was focusing on at the time was belonging, making sure that people felt like they belong so they can share their expertise with us. Because without it, we couldn't resolve issues and problems or come up with a new product or project without all the great informations that our employees held within.
I love it. I'm sitting here though wondering, with culture, it is a collective, right? There's the individual, but then there's the
Hmm.
individual in the context of the workplace, and that creates the culture.
Hmm.
And in your example from the Marine Corps, there's this kind of fallback, fail-safe. You've got rank, you've got a command and kind
Hmm.
of control culture
Hmm.
where
Yep.
it's like when it comes down to it, we know how this is going to play out, or
Hmm.
find yourself in the brig.
Yep.
Um, how do you transfer that to the workplace that isn't as structured and is
Hmm.
trying to care for the needs of the individuals, which are very different, right? Like, how do
Hmm.
you figure out and then cater to what everybody needs to feel like they belong?
Yes.
How did you figure that out? Like, how do you, what are the conversations? You mentioned trust. Did you mention like some other elements? And I'm thinking of like what's required to feel psychologically safe to take
Hmm.
those risks and
Hmm.
things like that. But I am just curious, how do you do that when it's not as, look, when it comes down to it, we all know you've got to do this if I say, versus trying
Hmm.
to keep people engaged, have that autonomy that they would need, that trust to feel like
Hmm.
they belong and enjoy their work.
It's a basic thing. You have to walk the talk. When I first got out of the Marine Corps, I was working at a law firm. I was going to law school. And I found that, wow, yes, very quickly, everyone in civilian life is not going to succumb to military, a militant person. And I didn't present myself that way anyway. A
Yeah,
lot of people would say, oh my gosh, I can't believe you were in the Marines. And I said, well, there's a side of me that needs to show up in her civil way. And then there's a side of me that has to show up in her militant way. The militant way you don't want, because that means that I'm probably in war or something like that. So we
right.
don't want that, right? So what I found was that walk the talk, demonstrate what I'm talking about. And so, how I would do that in human resources, for example, you have what's called a PIP, a performance improvement plan for people when we need some change, right? And so, what I would do, we always had an HR representative in the room. And
hmm
so, when I was training my HR staff, because first of all, I started with them about psychological safety. Okay. And I can talk about that in a minute. And what I would do with the meetings, and I said, this is how I want you all to conduct the meetings with the supervisor and the employee. And that is that yes, a PIP is for improving. It's almost like a last resort effort if you can't get
Doesn't
behavior
feel good
change or
if you're on that.
performance.
Yeah.
Right. But what I would say is that, hey, this meeting is really about you, the person who has the PIP, and we're really interested in investing in you to help turn things around. So we may not have been able to do it before, in trying to get a change in behavior or performance, but this PIP is going to allow us to do it together. So what I tried to do was to put the employee at ease, even though they know how serious a PIP is, but letting
Hmm.
them know they have control and we're here to support them and to ask any questions that they have. Or if I see progress not moving forward within a week, then I'm going to come back and have a conversation. Let's find out what's going on. Many times when people would get on a PIP, you find out all kinds of things that sometimes they are not confident. Sometimes they needed training. Sometimes they just didn't know how to show up. And sometimes it's things that are going on in the background, things that are happening at home, whether it's the illness of a parent or a child care issue or a marriage issue. And even though those things we say, oh, those shouldn't show up at the work, but if you're going through it, it's showing up at work because you're the one going through it.
Yeah.
And there are ways that we can help. We can send you to an EAP, call your EAP or call, in the health, on our health insurance, to speak with a psychologist or someone.
Right.
Those are things that I didn't allow the elephant to just sit in the room. Those
Mm.
are things that I would just say, and people would go, oh my goodness, she called it out. The senior vice president of HR called it out, and she made me feel comfortable about it. I didn't want people to feel shamed, and I didn't want them to think that, oh, I can't talk about things that come in home. No, I'm not saying you should come to work, for a psychology session. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is that when you come to work, show up as real people, and you show your vulnerable side, then I can help you. If you're still trying to cover it up and have pride, let pride stand in the way, then I
Mm.
can't
Yeah.
help you. So
Right.
then, when I am demonstrating to you that I really have your best interests at heart, even during a PIP, I've had people turn around in PIPs and come out a better employee and being more engaged with the unit in the more engaged in the organization after going through a PIP experience and still staying with the organization long term. So that's walking the talk, and letting people know, hey, this is how you feel. This is how I want you to understand what belonging feels like. That you can show up, be authentic, professionally tactful, authentic,
Hmm.
while you're still going through your personal situations and still be able to turn them around at home. And again, I'm not the psychologist. I'm not the person that says, oh, woo, woo, woo. No, I'm just going to show you what has to be done, but I'm going to let you know I'm going to support you during that time. And you're the one that determines the outcome. So if you say thanks, but no thanks, I'll go, no problem. I'll help you transition out. But all of the decision making is within your hand.
Yeah. As a trained professional diversity coach,
Hmm.
ICF certified, and kind of holding that space for people to do that work. And it's not therapy, but it's kind of like the work situations that you
Hmm.
haven't been able to uncover. I feel like that's where, if you do it right and you have that trusting relationship where people can feel safe enough to do that hard work.
Hmm.
Because there's so many masks that we wear
Oh,
at
yes.
work to, and if
Hmm.
people aren't talking about or sharing their experiences, I hear like walk the walk from you, but then so many people, I think, isolate because they're like,
Hmm.
oh, am I the only one that's going through shit at work?
Hmm.
Excuse me, going through stuff at work because no one else is
Hmm.
talking about that. That can be really isolating. But when people realize or leaders share some of their growth, they
Hmm.
empower others to kind of be like, okay, bring that human aspect to
Hmm.
the work situation.
Yes, I've even had employees come to me and say, hey, Wendy, I heard you help so and so in their situation, and they told me I could trust you. I've actually had people say that to me, and I'm like, come into my office, let's talk.
That's a powerful vouching for, right? So it's like
Yeah.
because it helps it sees the value of working closely with you, but then
Hmm.
speaks volumes that somebody would endorse you in that way. Uh
Hmm.
and I'm sure that experience turned out to be a good one as well.
It
So
is, and I'm sorry, and it's scary at the same time because everybody's situations are different, right? So you can't really have the same response because I'm still the head of HR, so there's still legal things that I have to weigh and,
yeah,
all kinds of things. And so sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So we do have to look at the other side when it doesn't work. But for the most part, that's how I start. I
yeah,
start with providing people, hopefully, with a space for psychological safety. And when they ask me, what does that mean? I tell them. And I tell them that you can say things to me that you might not think you can say to me, and it's okay. Don't disrespect me. Be tactful, be professional, but let's talk about it. Let's pull the elephant into the room, let's put them front and center.
Hmm. So let me ask you this. You brought up DEI work, and we kind of, I think, operated under this belief that if we educated or showed people or exposed them to the challenges that people have at different points of their entry into work or at work, whether it be attitudes or stereotypes or cultural differences, or even just being, the only person like you, on a team. Um, Creating that space for belonging and that psychological safety, as a goal, do you find that people know what they need to feel like they belong, or they know what they need to feel psychologically safe?
Well, I think in this day and age, especially when you're at work, sometimes people have to filter through all the stuff, right? You
Oh
have
yeah.
to get through the forest to see the trees. You got to get through all the weeds to understand what that really means. And they can't figure that out on themselves, not because they're not smart enough, but because they need to know the organization's stance on it. For instance, you'll have an individual who speaks up in a meeting, and then whatever their opinion was, they get back to their office after the meeting and their boss chastises them for disagreeing with them or giving the opinion that they give. And
Hmm.
so even though we're saying, so you may say, okay, there's psychological safety, but then they feel like, well, there really isn't because my boss just told me that I really can't give my opinion. And so we have to teach what that looks like and to help people to be okay with disagreement, to help the supervisors to say, hey, this person can share their opinion. It really has nothing to do with you as an individual as far as them disagreeing. And there's a way that we can disagree.
Hmm.
There's a way we show up when we're conversing with one another. We're not cutting each other down. We're not being disrespectful, but it's having a conversation. And you can only get all the juice out of the fruit unless you squeeze it all, meaning that bring up all the opinions, bring up all the things that people want to share in their experiences or their suggestions in order to get all the juice out to know how sweet we want this pot to be or this drink to be.
Hmm.
But if you don't get all the juice out, you're going to end up with sour grapes, maybe, or sour lemonade. And so we have to let people know exactly what that looks like. We do have to continue training in that aspect. And so I trained on psychological safety. I provided examples of what that meant, what that looked like, and helping put people at ease. You have to put people at ease because a supervisor might think, oh my gosh, this employee is really smart. I love that they're smart, but oh my gosh, they're going to take my job if I mean, people think of all kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
My thing is that I like to hire people who are smarter than me because look, I have somewhere to go. It's called upward. So somebody needs to replace me in succession planning. So I need to have that person in place. So I
Hmm.
might not feel threatened or anything by something like that, but you do have some people who do. Or for those who think that if people give their opinions, then they're being they I can't even get the word out, but it's like being belligerent, if you will.
Oh yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
not being the belligerent if you're showing up tactful and professional. You're just giving your opinion, about something or giving another suggestion for something so we together collectively can come up with the best result for the organization. So you do have to teach that. You do have to help people to understand what does that look like? How are we demonstrating it? And if it's not being done very well by our supervisors, then we need to have a chat with them. And so back to your original question and how you start all of this, I think you have to start out with the values of your organization. And you have to tell people just how much they mean. And you have to demonstrate how it's implemented. It's not just saying it when a person joins your organization and you're going through the employee handbook and you're going through onboarding and
Yeah.
orientation. You have to have deeper level conversations on exactly how you want this to show up and what it looks like.
Mm. That is powerful stuff, and sounds easy when you say it, but it is tough.
Not easy.
It is not. It is not work, or not easy work at all.
It's
You
not
know,
easy at all.
in your experience, do you have any good go-to trainings or approaches to help someone build that self-awareness especially like when maybe a blind spot that they
Mm.
has been uncovered based on feedback.
Mhm.
Here's a leader thinking, I'm doing my best. I'm a good person. I support everyone and all of their efforts here. And then somebody says, hey, this is the impact of your actions. And there's
Mhm.
the now cognitive dissonance and there's an emotional labor involved.
Mhm.
Anything in your toolbox to identify and help leaders through that?
Oh my gosh. First of all, you have to talk about it. You have to bring it up to know that people need training on it.
Squeeze the juice.
You have to squeeze. Yeah, you have to squeeze. You have to get uncomfortable.
Okay.
And being uncomfortable is the most uncomfortable thing, right? Okay. So you have to be okay with getting uncomfortable. And
Mm,
so when I first started at one organization, one of the things that I had to focus on was manager training. And it's not just sending a manager to training. Sometimes they come back from the training the same way they went to the training. There's no change. Okay. And so what I found myself doing in one-on-one coaching is letting the leader know, hey, I have something I need to tell you, and it's not going to be very good to hear.
mm,
It's going to be hard to hear. And even though it's going to be hard to hear, just know that the reason why we're having this conversation is so we can work on it, so we can see the blind spots, so we can see where there needs to be self-awareness, things for you to
mhm.
focus on. And so I would share that sometimes in the beginning of the conversation to help put people at ease. Because if people are coming in any person's office, whether it's HR or their supervisor's office, and they're already ready for a fight or on the offense or defense, you got to let all that out so they could
Right.
just show up being ready to be poured into and then pour in themselves to contribute to the conversation and to show up not with the mask on, not with the covers,
Mm,
not showing up of this is how I show up in an interview and I need you to see me. But I'm like, I've already peeled back the onion. I already see. Okay. And
yeah.
in order for me to help, this is what I'm going to need from you. And so sometimes it's not always an easy thing or a training that I recommend. There's not one in particular that I would say, oh, go to this training or that. You can go to any great training in the world. I've been to trainings for executives, but if you're not open to receive and to learn, you're going to walk out the same way that you came in. There's
Mm.
no training that could change you or make you change unless you agree yourself. So save your money. Let
Yes.
people know that
And
this is what I expect from you after this training. I like to come talk to your supervisors, talk to your people when they come out of these type of trainings.
mhm.
Find out what they know, find out what they learn, follow up with them, find out, have they met the expectations of what you expect them to get as a result of the training. Sure, every training says this is what you're going to learn as a result of the training. But the question is that really your result? Who are you
Right.
talking to about it? Who's following up with you about it? Those are the things that we need in support of the trainings that we go to.
The
So,
personal accountability. Yeah.
yes, you
Right.
have, thank you.
Uh-huh.
You have to be held account. You have to be you have to take responsibility for you.
Right.
I
Right.
can hold you accountable as a supervisor, but if you don't hold yourself for that self accountability,
Hmm.
again, save your money. So there has
Oh,
to be that understanding.
I love it. And, I've also found that people have this magical thinking around taking a training. And when the training's over, then the behavior change aligns with what they learned in the training, and that's it. When in my experience, you've got to practice. You got to try and fail a little bit differently, just keep
Mhm,
paying attention, cut yourself some
mhm,
slack, and practice that over time if you're going to
mhm.
really create lasting and meaningful change.
Yeah. And your organization also needs to give you room to do that.
Do that.
Room to try and fail, try and fail, try and fail, try and succeed.
There you go.
Okay. So
Uh,
when, like you said, one training is not a checkbox, one and done. I have all
mhm.
these books behind me and around my room here. My office is a library because I'm always learning. There's always something new to learn. It doesn't just stop with the first thing. If there's one thing that you're learning, that means there's something on this side of the learning and something on that side of the learning and
Yep.
something in front of it that you still need to try and keep up with. And so it's never a one and done.
No. In every new interaction, there's something to learn.
Yes, yes, there
Mhm.
is. Yes, there is. Even after this conversation, I'll be thinking about it. I'm like,
Me too. You've
not
given me
taking
a lot
away
to
from
think
this.
about. Yes. And man, the time has flown, but we need to wrap up. Thank you so much for for sharing
Yes.
your experience and your wisdom with me. This has been a great conversation. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you again for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.